Hi, welcome to the Play Typer Guy podcast. I'm Stephen Robinson. Joining me is my friend Noor Berlatksy from the always sadly relevant newsletter, Everything is Horrible. How are you, Noah?
Um, everything's kind of horrible, but otherwise all right.
So let's jump into this. You had, when this airs, a couple weeks ago, written a very, I thought, great piece about perpetual scandal machine, Graham Platner, and how his dropping out of the main Senate race would give Democrats the best chance to actually defeat Susan Collins. And I don't necessarily disagree, but a question I'd been asking even before he dropped out, when he was ahead of the polls consistently, and when all this was happening, was um, why why didn't other people run in this race, a very vital race? It's a state that Kamala Harris won even while losing not just electoral college but the popular vote. So surely not a difficult sort of a reach. Why did no one else run? And I don't consider Mills sort of a viable candidate. She was 80. She was particularly unpopular in her own state as sitting governor.
She isn't really. Hasn't really been unpopular. Polls showed her doing well against Collins. I think kind of a bunch of things happened. Um, First of all, a lot of people got behind Platner. I mean, people sort of frame it as like, oh, it's just the progressives, it's just the progressive wing, but that isn't really what happened. I mean, what
Mm-hmm.
happened is that he got, obviously he got progressive support from Bernie Sanders and from other progressive orgs. But, like the Pod Save America people who are not really generally seen as leftists were really enthusiastic and really boosted him. Um, and, as it went on, Gallego, who's kind of on the right of the party, embraced him. He just got a lot of support from a lot of people who, I think the Bulwark was enthusiastic. Just a lot of people were enthusiastic about what they saw as kind of this vision of kind of like Democrats of white male working class Democrats, which is a vision which appeals to a lot of people across the sort of democratic spectrum who are uncomfortable with the fact that it's a multiracial coalition, which is, majority women. And, really in many ways, majority non-white. I mean, it's this, the Democratic Party, the leaders of the Democratic Party, many of the leaders of the Democratic Party are uncomfortable with who their voters actually are,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because for a range of reasons, both because, there's bigotry, which says that white men should lead. And there's also, white men are disproportionately powerful in terms of the electoral map especially because of the Senate, but also because of the electoral college. And so there's this sense that Democrats should somehow get those voters and that those voters are more important than the voters they have. And Graham Plattner really embodied that for a lot of people, which includes progressives, but was not just progressives. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons he was so popular and one of the reasons he did so well was because I don't think people saw him as a factional candidate.
Mm-hmm.
People saw him as the choice of the Democratic Party. And, some also saw him as like a progressive hope. But a lot of people also saw him as, oh, this is the guy Democrats have chosen. And that put him in a position where he was very difficult to beat. So part of the
But was
reason
he,
that
he was
part of
doing well in person though, like in town halls or whatever, in
sure,
ways
sure,
that
sure.
Mills wasn't? Because I don't think Maine
Right. Well,
is
the thing about,
necessarily rolls over for outsiders.
the thing about, but they did. That's kind of the thing. I mean, they usually don't, but in this case, they did. And what happened with Mills, as I understand it from kind of reporting and talking to people who are closer to it than I am, what happened is there were a bunch of candidates who were interested in running who are now all running to replace Platner, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Bellows and I can't remember his name. I mean, I'm not super familiar with them all, but they all ran for governor, right? Because they all ran for governor. I mean, maybe partially because Susan Collins was seen as less beatable, but I think also because Schumer thought Mills would be the best candidate. He thought that, she was a statewide candidate. She'd won statewide. She was popular. I mean, people kind of think she's not popular, but she was popular at the time.
She was polling terribly, though. She started polling badly, and maybe you know better about the timing of this, but there were articles about her cratering polling by like mid 2025. Now, maybe like she was starting doing well and things started to shift. Also, and this was our problem because she's the sitting governor, which would put her at a disadvantage with a senator, was that Mainers were not happy with the direction of the state and when things were going on in the states.
Everybody was kept out of the race, and Mills dithered, which was a bad sign. Like she wasn't willing to commit. And then she did get in, but she never actually ran that hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Platner was running around the whole state. He was campaigning hard. He was campaigning like he wanted to win. And she kind of like wasn't doing events. She was reluctant to do debates. She, and she wouldn't, I mean, she kind of like, this data center. She vetoed this bill blocking data centers, which was very popular. And, it's the sort of thing that was an easy win if you're governor. You say you just sign it. But she decided not to sign it. I mean, she just didn't seem to be, she wasn't engaged. And you could tell she wasn't engaged because, I mean, like all these scandals came out and she like ran an ad saying, oh, these scandals are bad. And then she, was just like, well, whatever. I mean, I think she was, I just don't think she was really that interested. She sort of thought, well, it would be nice to be senator. Maybe my party needs me. Maybe it'd be nice to be senator. But when she was faced with actually like doing the work, she didn't want to. So I really think it's less about, sort of like her positions or center versus left, and more about that she just didn't want it.
No.
And rather than saying up front she didn't want it, she kind of blocked all these other people who really could have had a chance out. And then you were left with, but I also think that part of the reason that she was like, well, whatever, I'll just forget it, is because there was, like people who she thought, I'm closer to them on the issues, and this guy's got a Nazi tattoo. Those people were like, well, Platner's the guy.
Yeah.
So I think basically, I think a lot of people in the party liked Platner, and I think that. So I think it was a range of things. A lot of people in the party liking Platner, Mills really not being the right candidate, less because of anything about her in particular, just because like she just wasn't that interested. And by the time that was all clear, I mean, like, people say Platner won 70% of the vote. Well, yeah, he was running unopposed. I mean, there are other candidates there, but on the ballot. But I mean, the party. I mean, Schumer endorsed him. I mean, everybody had made it clear that
he endorsed after Platner won.
Did he endorse after Platner?
Yeah. I think, well, it's interesting because we're both Platner and with Fetterman, who's a disaster of a different stripe. There is often from the center this idea of, and as I've said to you offline, I blame everyone, but the other people from the center who are sort of like, this is the left. The left needs to own up to this. And as someone who's probably a little bit more liberal than I am, you probably are flattered that suddenly this perception that 70% of Mainers are the left, are Bernie types. Same with like Fetterman, who crushed Connor Lamb. The idea that this was the left's fault entirely seems unfair, but this is perhaps a party-wide issue.
Yeah, I mean, Fetterman's a similar case where he definitely had progressive support, but I mean, he won with. I mean, yeah, I mean, he just really. I mean, I kind of would have preferred Malcolm Kenyatta, but it was like pretty clear that like nobody else felt that way. I mean, like pretty much everybody, just coalesced around him because he seemed to have so much support. So, and yeah, so that's kind of what I'd say. Is I'd say that it's it kind of wasn't. I mean, there were obviously like there are factional rifts in the party, and that plays out in kind of most contests in one way or another. But to see Platner's rise as simply the left versus the establishment doesn't really get at what happened, because the establishment, like a good bit of the establishment was on board with him from the beginning, and then the rest kind of shrugged. I mean, it's a pretty, I mean, what I talked about in that piece I think you're citing is, I mean, there was a pretty stark difference between how centrists responded to Mamdani and how they responded to Platner, right? Because, I mean, like, people, I mean, Schumer never endorsed Mamdani and probably voted against him. Jeffries, like, just like had to be like, really steamrolled into it because he was afraid that, he was afraid that that Mamdani was going to mount a successful primary challenge.
It's sort of interesting. There's a lot of sometimes the party is fighting the wrong battles or thinking certain things. Is to go back to your term of the one cool trick, because sort of like in the Michigan Senate race, there's a focus on perhaps a candidate using the term defund the police and then referring to like 2020 as if the situations are very similar. Like whatever you might think about what was happening in 2020, like ICE is murdering people in the streets compared to there being riots or unrest, whatever the term you want to describe it, in 2020. And to me, it's like, well those are not like, it's not listening to voters.
Well, to me, we're in an environment where any Democrat can win in, lots of areas because people fucking hate Trump, as they should, And so,
well, let me ask you, let me jump on that, because
all the sort of hair pulling about electability is seems like kind of beside the point compared to like, what do you do when you're in power? Because there's a lot that needs to be done.
Sort of seeing it in Michigan with Haley Stevens consistently saying that she's the one who can beat Rogers and not Abdul El-Sayed. And as you are saying, it's like, well, what is the Democratic argument? So the Democratic argument has always been vote blue no matter who. There is like, Trump is murdering people in the streets, his goons. He's terrible. Like the idea that like we can't these socialists will cost us races will then suggest that like, whatever El-Sayed might believe. And again, this is not even a mayor, where a mayor might have more. It's just like essentially someone voting in the Senate, one of 100. His positions are going to be so liberal enough that Trump's insanity, like that there are voters who will choose his enablers over a and maybe that is true, but it just seems very counter. It sort of seems like Democrats are arguing in different forces. Like, is there a pro-democracy coalition or isn't there?
The polls I've seen don't show a huge difference between Stevens and Abdul El-Sayed in the general election.
It's not true. It's like it's fundamentally untrue. Like she keeps citing it, and it's not true.
It looks like it's close for both of them. And I mean, the truth is there's a lot of anti-establishment energy right now. And so, I don't know that necessarily means that, somebody like Stevens can't win, but I'm skeptical that she has a huge advantage against somebody who's more critical of what we've been doing. And so,
well, if their argument is also that the uncommitted cost Harris Michigan, which is I don't think is entirely true, but that's what Stevens has been suggesting, which is wrong in 2 points. One, okay, you should show some humility because you want these people to vote for you, right? So she's sort of running a scorched earth kind of screw uncommitted, screw, I'm a partisan Democrat, even though the partisan Democrat lost in 2020. But all of you people are going to come out, even though if you talk to any centrists, they argue that leftists are unreliable. And well, then that would mean that she's in worse. Wouldn't that put her in a worse position than El Sayed, because you're saying that the responsible centrist would obviously then rally, but that is not what she's arguing. So it's very confusing. The electability argument itself has always frustrated me because it is it fundamentally never works. Like even when it was clear. So like John Kasich, so in 2016, Trump was losing by double digits in head-to-head polls against Hillary Clinton during the primary, and like Rubio and Jeb and Kasich, these were clear, like not even like close, like what you're citing with El Sayed and Stevens. There was like clear, like you could show it to primary voters, and they did not care. They wanted Trump, and it happened in 2024, where it's like, they were saying, no, Nikki Haley is clearly better position to beat Biden. Than they don't care. It says people vote for who they want to vote for, who they feel represents their values. So run on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between Republicans and Democratic voters. Democrats have for a long time been more interested in electability. But I mean, my concern about kind of running against uncommitted is that it's an Islamophobic dog whistle, and I really do not want our party to be doing that. And I think I think that long term it really undermines you, because if you're supposed to be the party of multiracial democracy, how do you do that while race baiting Muslims? It's disgusting. It's against our values. I really feel like the party needs to stop doing that shit. And I think that the best way to stop doing that shit is to elect more Muslim leaders.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think Mamdani has been a huge force for good in the party for a whole range of reasons, but also because, we need Muslim leaders. And so that's kind of, if, on that alone, I really hope El Sayed wins, because I think that, you definitely, obviously you want the Senate to flip, but if we're going to get out of this fascist doom loop, we need to be less fascist, and that means not being Islamophobic assholes. Not confident that a campaign which is doing all these Islamophobic dog whistles is going to get us where we need to be.
Well, yeah, because, and I don't think it's necessary, it was both moral and electability, but your argument was like, I think it's going to be hard for the rapist to beat Susan Collins. It's very different from like Stevens sort of hinting as to why she can beat, as you said, it's more of a dog whistle. And then to see people like Neera Tanden and Shannon Watts, who, Shannon Watts, I otherwise respect some of the work she's done, but it's very disappointing to see them say like, oh, well, we can't risk another Platner with El Sayed, which is just a gross, that to me also, believe women or believe accusers, you've written movingly about this, should be about that. It shouldn't be about weaponizing trauma or weaponizing victims. So, and when you are the next day trying to link Platner based apparently solely on what you perceive his ideology or his ideology to be with someone who you are politically opposed to, that just seems cynical. Because no, obviously El Sayed does not have a Nazi tattoo. He is not, there's no credible accusations of sexual assault against him. And also and I've written about this even before, Bill Clinton, Eric Swalwell, there are a lot of vetted men who had shady pasts And so this idea of trying to use that as a sense of, oh, to sort of in this weird way stop the next Mamdani or the next even AOC, because it's like, oh, you never know, if they haven't held office for 20 years, they could be a rapist. It's just so cynical.
Dave Dan at the American Progressive wrote a piece about Platner sometime back, which was kind of headlined something like, "Oh, we don't need heroes, or we shouldn't expect politicians to be heroes." And then kind of went on to say, well, I don't really care about Platner's Nazi tattoo. What I care about are his issue positions. And I think that's been shown to be really misguided.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The people who said, Jesus, this is a problem, which is what I said. I mean, I wrote this 8 months ago. I had a piece saying Platner's not going to be senator. That was 8 months ago after the Nazi tattoo came out. And, and it's because, somebody who, first of all, it was like pretty clear he was lying.
Was it just the lying? Because, there's the Senator Burr thing, right? So he was a member of the Klan, and, he obviously was not anymore. He had also sort of moral reformation type thing.
I'm sorry, who are you talking about?
Robert Byrd, West Virginian senator.
Right.
And so, I can see people having a view of, look, people F up. And if there's I'm willing to embrace an F up narrative, or even like someone's personal life, if they're sexting, they would not put cheating on your wife, even though I might find that morally repugnant. That is different from sexual assault. So like, a consensual situation is different from obviously assault. I think, but for you, because I'm trying to like thread the needle on, because people are like, these are all these red flags. I could see logical positions of someone saying, I'm willing to forgive this, or this is obviously a personal issue, and what matters is the position someone holds, especially if, in a party that had nominated Bill Clinton twice. But in your sense, was it the lying? Is what it's more of the fact that he was lying about these things?
When I talked about this in this piece that I wrote 8 months ago, I was like, yeah, people can change. And it wasn't just the tattoo, right? There were all these Reddit posts in which, amongst other things, he sort of like attacked women who came forward about sexual assault, which seems like, a huge problem.
Yes, that's probably a bigger one, yes, than the Nazi tattoo.
Well, and he also, he was saying homophobic things, he was saying racist things, he was saying misogynist things. So there's kind of all this stuff, and he's got this Nazi tattoo, which he seems to be lying about. Like lying about when he knew about it, and his reaction was not. He sort of apologized, but like it was all this kind of, well, that's not really who I am, and you should take that on faith. There wasn't really like, how dare you suggest this is who I am? I was like, we got the fucking tattoo. So there, I felt like there were like he wasn't. I don't know, like Naomi Klein, right? I don't know if you saw this, but she had made a tweet about Platner and about, saying, oh, I met him and he seemed great. And then so people went back to her and said, what do you feel about this now? And she was obviously like just horrified, right? She wrote another post where she was like, I should have done more due diligence. I kind of betrayed the people who trust me. I'm really like, she was obviously like, she obviously like really felt that she had screwed up, and she was really sorry. And she, was talking about, like how she messed up, how she wanted to do better, like what harm was caused. And this was just like a tweet. Like, right? I mean, like, this was not her having, like, worn a Nazi tattoo for 20 years. This was not her, like, using the R word, which Platner did during the campaign. I mean, like, and there was no sense that he felt anything like, I mean, he didn't like say, he didn't talk about, like, how he came to that position. He didn't really talk about, like who he was harming, or like, what he might feel like he needed to do to like make up for that. And that wasn't just for the tattoo. I mean, that was like for all this stuff. I mean, his response was always, "Oh, they're out to get me." "Oh, somebody has conspired against me." "Oh, of course nobody should think. Don't you think that you should let me, don't I'm not that person. How dare you say I am?" It's not even really asking for redemption, It's just kind of like, it shouldn't matter because I'm a good person. And it's like, you're asking people to vote for you. You're asking marginalized people to sort of like put their faith in you. Like, and yet you don't seem to really care that you keep, insulting them. So it's kind of, I mean, that was really the case from the beginning.
Yeah, this comes up to something I'd wanted to ask you about. When once again, a New York Times editorial today saying there are 3 things it takes to win by Thomas Edsall. You can imagine what those things are: be tougher on immigration, crime, and trans issues. Now, again, this is America. It is a democracy. If you believe in a hardline immigration policy, if you believe in a hardline public safety positions, if you are even kind of virulently anti-trans, I definitely don't believe in the latter, but I'm saying if those are your things, this is America. Run on those things against me or you, like, let's have it out. Let's have a debate, and then America votes. But what bothers me, because in the article he says, "Oh, I'm very uncomfortable. I'm kind of queasy raising these issues." So it just seems to me that, okay, well, then you don't believe in it. You just are assuming that you can gain power by sacrificing literally, like, you can argue about tough on crime, obviously hurting marginalized people, but even the most like sort of fairy tale version of being tough on immigration, with ICE murdering people, and being tough on trans people with the persecution that this administration is doing to trans people, is clearly like hurting vulnerable people. It's not like we're going to lock up rapists and murderers. We're just like, we want to hurt more vulnerable people because that will give us power. And you don't even really believe in it. You sort of feel like, I guess I have to make this sacrifice, not my own, but I'm saying I have to make this sacrifice for power. And that just seems like, I can see why there is a sense of, especially from young people or some other folks in our politics, are like, I don't want any part of that. Like, so you've seen sort of politicians from Newsom, even Buttigieg, who are taking these new positions, which are clearly focus group driven. So now Buttigieg says, "Oh, well, maybe we should be anti-trans," which again is not like, similar to what you were saying about a Nazi tattoo. It's like, it wasn't like, "Oh, I held this belief and now I don't because of these reasons." It's just like, no, this is just what I need to believe now to get elected. Or, I think Kamala Harris had released something about, here's the things. It's just like, oh, it just seems like you just looked at what is popular right now, and people fundamentally don't respect that. Like, I don't know how to shake enough people to tell you, like, that is not, you're never going to win an election based on this.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First of all, I mean, I just want to go back to the fact that Platner was like, again, he was a liar. And one of the things he was lying about was what was out there. And I think that was evident initially. And this is the reason why you don't want to trust politicians who are lying to you. Because, I mean, like people kept saying, "Oh, there must be no more out there." And I kept saying, no, he's a liar. There's going to be more out there. And I was right for 8 months. And I think I'm still right. Like, there's still more out there. I don't know if people bother to uncover it now. But,
no.
If he was still campaigning, there would be more stuff that would come out.
I think it was because it was not rational to keep lying, because obviously it will come out. But I guess people who are are narcissistic, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's how people don't understand Trump, because they will try to attribute sort of normal, rational behavior to him. It's like, well, a pathological liar sometimes lies when there is no reason to do so, if that makes sense.
But what I would say about I think there's a range of things. I don't know who this person is who wrote that in the Times, but I think in general, when people say, "Oh, I hate to say this because I don't really believe it, but we need to do X, Y, and Z," I don't believe them. I don't believe that's true. I think you like cops. I think you want to hurt immigrants. I think you want to hurt trans people. If you're pushing those policies, I don't know why I should give the benefit of the doubt. Especially since the evidence that is the right way to go is really weak right now.
Oh yeah.
It's like you're massaging the evidence to get to these policies that you claim you don't want to support. I don't believe that you don't want to support them.
Yeah.
I think you want to be considered a good person, but you also want to hurt immigrants and trans people.
To your point, it's like, just admit that you believe in it or not. People respect that you actually believe in this more than some desire to be seen as a good person, because it's blaringly inconsistent. It's just sort of like, it's clear what you value and what you don't, and so you just don't. Why look like a fraud?
Yeah, and we've seen what happens when. We've seen these approaches, right? Biden tried to push through this draconian, horrible immigration bill in 2024 in an effort to, defang that issue. And all it did was make Trump able to say, look, everybody agrees with me. We need to, terrorize people. But then, in the other option, Chris Van Hollen went to El Salvador, right? Everybody was telling him. People like Matt Iglesias were like, how dare you? You're hurting the party. He went to El Salvador, and it was he got a huge amount of good press, and it was important in, this. Republicans have cratered on immigration. Have these discussions, and it's as if the polling doesn't exist. The polling shows that people are really, really unhappy with ICE and with the way that the Republicans are conducting immigration policy. And that hasn't just hurt Republicans. People aren't just saying, oh, we need to roll back ICE. People are more positive about immigrants than they've been in decades.
Well, Iglesias even said that it's not a politician's job to change public opinion, which I kind of fundamentally disagree with. Why then just make it American Idol? Why have politicians? We could just all vote for everything. And I've gotten pushed heat from Blue Sky on this, where I've even, by simply acknowledging sometimes when the polls have been against us. But for me, I acknowledge it to sort of, well, how do we change it? How do we help this issue? And to me, it's like, okay, why is no one talking about immigration, especially after you voted for the Lake and Riley Act and all of this sort of stuff, and you funded ICE and all of this? Now you can state, this is what happened. You could even kind of come to people and say, I get why you might believe this is fair, like a hardline immigration policy, but it leads to this. These people who aren't doing anything, it's not because if it was just a bunch, if the open border is leading to rapists and murderers, that's all they would be No, they're getting legitimate members of society, and Stephen Miller's a raging Nazi who hates immigrants, especially brown immigrants. And look at what they're trying to do to these Haitians. The people there are saying they're perfectly decent people helping our community. You have a strong argument for this. Similar to and so to me, it frustrates me when they sort of just roll over on it. Same with feeling like, oh man, the anti-trans folks found that in on fairness for young girls, and what do we do? And it's like, okay, well, you could just challenge the idea of, because they're saying it out loud, which is that the end result is that we want to completely exterminate. They've used the term eliminate trans people. So it's just they want to get. It's not just about that, and we could still debate the fairness of like eliminating trans girls from playing in sports with their peers, but they've said this is just so that we can get it on the record that these are not women. They're not real women. And that will then be used for everything to thus vanish. And there's no public support for that. Finally, I guess I would ask you, because you're a little bit more to the left than I am, and a common thing I'm seeing from folks, from pundits, again, from people like Neera Tanden and Downward and others, is that effectively we are not in a coalition together. You are not in a coalition with me. You are just a liability. And and that the best thing for the party is that people like you, and maybe you don't associate yourself with Mamdani or DSA or whatever, but you seem to have similar.
I love Mamdani.
You seem to have similar politics. So I'm going to say, like, this is a DSA person in the wild. Like, you are part of the, as Fetterman says, the dirtbag left, which is which is a wonderful thing to hear. Remember that doesn't what you talk about with your coalition, which Republicans would never do about their own. I get it, but like, this argument of like we can win without you, which apparently, I mean, Haley Stevens, someone in the room with her, seems to think is the case, because you don't go scorched earth that way, unless you believe you can win without this group. So, one, what do you think the thinking behind that is? And like, what, like there is no, like, because it seems like it's been proven again and again that this dream coalition, because I've seen someone else state this, it's like, and David French, who would have his own reason for saying so, is that no, it's truly just we need the center left and the center right together and banish the extremists, and we'll all live happily ever after. And that's never been proven to be the case. Every victory Democrats have had has been you and me, not me and Nikki Haley, even if we might go to the same wine bar. Like that's not who's leading to Democratic victories. But what is your thought on that about essentially?
Well, I have a few things.
Guys to go.
First of all, like, the dirtbag left is like a particular, that's like podcast, like, I don't know. It was like first applied to like Chapo Trap House, and now it's people like Ryan Grimm. And I mean, like, a lot of those people were into Platner. I mean, it's kind of like there is this kind of like group of people who, or Ken Klippenstein, who was like, making misogynist jokes about people who oppose Platner, and who refused to apologize for, for endorsing him and attacking his critics. So I mean, there are bad actors on the left, as there are bad actors anywhere. Mm-hmm. There are some people on the left who are misogynist and racist. I mean, I think it's less, but it can also be very damaging because people don't have anywhere else to go. The right's sort of seen as the enemy. So then if you have these problems when you're on the left, it can be really kind of gutting. So, I mean, I don't want to like deny that exists. I mean, obviously it can be a problem. I would say that there are a couple of problems with this idea that you can just go after the left and cut them off and somehow make a different, better coalition. I mean, the first problem is that anti-leftism is really like central to fascism. I mean, this is a big, like, it was big for Hitler, it was big for Joe McCarthy. I mean, like, these are strategies that fascists use to get support from people in the center. And it's very effective. Mm-hmm. In various fascist movements, it's been quite effective. And, and part of the reason it's effective is because you can use it also to tar marginalized people, right? Because, I mean, Neera Tanden is obviously a woman of color. Like, there are lots of liberals and, center left people who are women and who are people of color. But at the same time, women and people of color tend to be further to the left, right, than the electorate as a whole. And when you start to go after the left, people like, when Trump sort of talks about communists, right? Those are dog whistles for people on the left, but it's also a dog whistle for Black people. It's also
Yeah.
a dog whistle for Jewish people.
Mhm.
It's a way to it's definitely now a dog whistle for like immigrants and Muslims, right? So when you start playing this game of like, oh, we're just gonna bash the left, you're giving the fascists a huge weapon,
Yeah.
and they will use it. They're going to use it
It's
to.
definitely dangerous. I know, sure, a lot of left-wing voters might look more like you than me who are voting, especially in cities, for some of these candidates, but those candidates are like, there's a woman of color who unseated an incumbent Democrat. And when you hear these arguments of like, oh well, it's all the white left, it's sort of a convenient cudgel of using race. I'm just only hitting the white left. These guys, this sort of, and they're sexist and they're Bernie bros, even though, and I had to learn this in quote unquote by interviewing people that despite when they were saying Bernie bros, a lot there were women of color, despite the sort of narrative of who was believed these policies. And to your point, it's dangerous because you know what happened to the Voting Rights Act is bad on its own merits, but um, a lot of those seats were held by sort of older, legitimately more moderate Black politicians, but they're vanishing. And so, in a couple cycles, the diversity of the Democratic Party will be some of these women and men, but these folks from the left. It'll be a lot more of the AOCs, a lot more of I'm sorry, I just keep forgetting her name, the woman who won in Colorado, and that's going to be the face of it. And as you said, it will be dangerous to have white moderate Democrats joining Republicans in essentially bashing and demonizing people of color, up to a lot of women who, and this is consistently going back to their experiences when they were Hillary Clinton supporters in 2016 and what they experienced online. And I do think it shifted this idea that and one woman said this outright, it's like, oh, it's the white left has been worse to me than MAGA. Obviously, from a political standpoint, like of voting for who you vote for, the impact on the world, that's not entirely true. I can respect how that might feel when you're online. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I was talking about Ken Klippenstein. He's fucking awful. He treats people badly. He's a sexist. He's terrible. And there is this kind of like, Hassan Piker kind of says a lot of stuff that is
Oh yeah.
bad. I don't. I'm not claiming that like the left is like everybody who might call themselves on the left is like awesome or somebody I'd want to be associated with, but I also think a lot of the people who do work with, I don't know. I just, in Chicago, I've kind of gone to demonstrations about, against, you know, I mean, against Israeli genocide, but also like, people are, people marching against Trump, and a lot of those people, like these people who are organizing on the ground, in a lot of ways, like, to like help immigrants to organize kind of like, abortion funds. A lot of those people are pretty left, and I don't think that it's a good idea. I think Will Stansel was actually talking about this online. I know he's kind of a vortex for online controversy and hate, but he was saying he's somebody who's done, and he's somebody who the left has been horrible to, I think. Often.
Mhm.
I have a lot of disagreements with him, but like the way he's treated online as kind of not ideal. Anyway, but he's, he said, despite all his problems at the left, when he does organizing in Minneapolis to do these ice, to monitor ice, or to try to protect people, a lot of the people who are doing that are like DSA or they're leftists,
Mm.
I mean, and so when people say they hate the left, they want to cut the left loose, I think that and point to some people online who are, in fact bad actors, or who do not conduct themselves well. I mean, I don't mean to tell them that they can't be upset at that or that they should feel like they need to embrace those people, but the idea that you could just cut off the left entirely is cutting off a lot of people who do on the ground work and who are really, really dedicated to equal rights for immigrants, to abortion rights, to holding cops accountable. And it just seems like to cut those people off to sort of like make common cause with somebody like Ross Douthat or David Brooks, who, I mean, these people are, their affect is sort of polite, but their policy prescriptions are poisonous, and they don't consider, they kind of don't consider a lot of people to deserve full rights or to be fully human. Like, I think that's just like a poor strategic choice. I mean, currently, like suburban women, like a lot of those people are, they kind of want to string Trump up by his entrails. And, they hate Chuck Schumer because he refuses to talk like that. So, I mean, I don't think it's like, one or the other. And, yeah, I mean, I think that the way the lines get drawn about like who's in the left and who's over here are often not super. I should say too that I've had pretty miserable experiences with online leftists and dirtbag leftists.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've had this is a while ago, and actually was not about Israel, but like I was the target of a pretty anti-Semitic, mostly left dog pile, which was really miserable. At one point on Twitter, I criticized those people, and they've been kind of horrible back. So I'm not like, yeah, I mean, like there are, I mean, it's the same problem everywhere, which is that, the way kind of the people who are best positioned to make money often are more white and more male. And especially in like online spaces where the left is, I mean, you talk about kind of people in the center being too willing or too eager to embrace people to their right. But that kind of happens with the left too. Like people like Glenn Greenwald and people like Brian Grimm are much more interested in making common cause with Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, because they see that as like this, they see that as this like, all the anti-establishment people can group together and we can, defeat the evil centrists. And, for Glenn Greenwald, that means like, basically being more enthusiastic about like feeling like he wants to make common cause with Nazis, right? I mean, literal Nazis. I mean, it's Tucker Carlson. And again, it's some of the same impulses, it's the sense that, it's, yeah, I mean, it's like, we all feel like, white, there's the sort of privileging of white men's positions, and within every movement is ugly and kind of leads bad places. And so there's kind of like, I mean, and this is kind of why, like, it's like, what's up with Maine? Like, there's Susan Collins, and then there's Platner, and then there's Angus King. But like the common the common through line all there is this kind of this dream of, they keep electing and being interested in people who are kind of nonpartisan, right? Who have, like, it's either like a nonpartisanship of the center, where it's Angus King and Susan Collins claiming that they're eager to reach across the aisle, or it's like this kind of like nonpartisanship of the left, where Platner's saying, "Oh well, I can, I can be the candidate for what I can be the left candidate, but for white men." You know, so I think there's kind of that
Mhm.
basically this idea that, oh, we wish we could abandon partisanship and somehow make a coalition with people on the other side. And I think that it's really behooves both the left and the center left to realize that, like, you're not going to beat fascist partisanship without partisanship. Like, you need to make some sort of commitment to the people who are actually on your side in terms of like partisan politics. And you can hate their guts, but they're going to be more consistent and more trustworthy allies than the people who are telling you that, I mean, who just, who are on one way or another fascist partisans, and like,
Yeah.
you just want to stay away from that.
Well, and part of the partisanship, when people don't like partisanship, there is a sense of like being part of a team. So this perception that the Maverick, and I know that Fetterman was trying to run for that, but it just, to me, is off-putting because it just seems like, oh, I will prove my individuality by hitting people in my team. Look how cool I am.
The weird thing about Fetterman is, I mean, part of the reason that people were enthusiastic about him is because he promised to be a hyper partisan, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, he promised, he was like, I'll be the vote for impeachment. I will always, he said, put me in, coach. I'll always be that 51st vote. I mean, so he really did. I mean, and, Platner kind of was never doing that. Platner was always saying, oh, I don't like the Democrats. And Fetterman was always saying, yes, I'm more Democrat than Democrat. And then he, basically, I mean, people talk about his stroke, but I think it was really, I think Zionism kind of like, melted
Hmm.
his brain, because 10/7 happened and he had always been very Zionist. And, that kind of became a much bigger split in the party. And he just kind of turned against the left in this way that's been kind of a disaster.
Thank you once again for taking the time to chat with
Oh, of
me
course.
about
Thank
all
you
of
for
this.
having me.
Thank you so much, Noah Berlatksy at Everything is Horrible, also at Public Notice. Read his stuff's always well thought out, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.